Some betrayals happen in a single moment. A slap, a shout, a door slammed shut forever. But mine didn't happen like that. Mine happened slowly, quietly, over 11 months. And by the time I understood what was really going on, I wasn't angry right away. I was confused, because the man who was destroying my life was still kissing me goodnight every single evening. My name is Alina. I was 32 years old when my whole world turned into a lie I didn't know I was living in. I want you to imagine something before I start. Imagine you build a house brick by brick for 8 years. You paint the walls yourself. You choose the furniture together. You plant a small garden outside because your husband once said he loved the smell of jasmine in the evening. And then one day you find out that the man who helped you build that house had a second house in a different city with a different woman, and he was planning to move there permanently without ever telling you a single word. That's not a story, that's what happened to me. His name was Daniel. We met in college back when we were both broke, both hungry for something better, both convinced that we would build a life so strong that nothing could break it. And for the first 6 years of our marriage, I actually believed that. I believed we were one of those rare couples who made it. Our friends used to joke that we were relationship goals. Our families trusted us completely. My mother used to say, if there's one marriage in this family that will never fall apart, it's yours. She had no idea how wrong she was. Daniel worked as a regional sales manager for a logistics company. His job required him to travel sometimes 2, sometimes 3 times a month. In the beginning, I hated those trips. I used to cry a little every time his flight took off, silly as that sounds. But over time, I got used to it. I trusted him completely. I never once checked his phone. I never once questioned a hotel receipt. Why would I? I loved him, and more importantly, I respected him. And when you respect someone, you don't treat them like a suspect. That trust is exactly what he used against me. It started with small things. He began mentioning a name, Priya, a colleague from a partner company he worked with in another city. At first, it was innocent. Priya helped me close a big deal today. Priya recommended a good restaurant. I didn't think twice. Colleagues talk about colleagues, that's normal. But somewhere around month 4, something shifted. He stopped mentioning her name completely. And that was the first sign I ignored. Because when someone suddenly stops talking about a person they used to mention all the time, it's not because that person disappeared from their life. It's because that person became too important to mention casually anymore. I didn't know that back then, I know it now. His trips became longer. 2 days turned into 4. 4 days turned into a full week. He said his company was expanding, that he had more responsibilities, more targets to hit. I believed every word because why wouldn't I? This was the man who used to send me a good morning text every single day for 8 years without fail, even from the most remote areas with barely any signal. But here's something strange about betrayal: it doesn't erase the good moments, it poisons them. Because now, when I look back at those good morning texts, I don't feel warmth, I feel sick. Because I know now that some of those messages were sent from a bed that wasn't ours. By month 7, I started noticing something different in his behavior. He became quieter at home, not cold, not distant in an obvious way, just elsewhere. Like his body was in our house, but his mind was somewhere far away, somewhere he'd rather be. One night I asked him directly, Daniel, is everything okay? You seem far away lately. He looked at me, and I remember this so clearly, because it was the first time I saw him lie to my face without even blinking, and he said, I'm just tired from work. That's all, don't worry. I believed him because that's what love does. It makes you choose belief over doubt, even when doubt is standing right in front of you, waving a red flag. Little did I know, in a city 3 hours away, there was a woman living a life that looked remarkably like mine. Similar furniture, similar routines, similar promises whispered at night, except in her version of the story, she believed she was the only one. Neither of us knew about the other, not yet. But that was about to change. Because sometimes the universe has its own way of delivering the truth, and it usually arrives at the worst possible moment and in the most undeniable way. For me, that moment came on a Tuesday afternoon in the most unexpected place I could have imagined, a hospital waiting room. It was an ordinary Tuesday. I remember because I had taken half a day off work to visit my aunt who had been admitted for a minor surgery. Nothing serious, just a routine gallbladder procedure. I was sitting in the hospital waiting area, scrolling through messages, waiting for the doctor to come out and update the family. That's when my phone rang, an unknown number with a city code I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer it, but something, call it instinct, call it fate, made me pick up. A woman's voice, shaky, unsure, came through the line. "Hi, I'm sorry to bother you. Is this Alina, Daniel's wife?" My stomach dropped before she even said another word, because there was something in her tone, a kind of nervous honesty, that told me this wasn't a wrong number. This was a woman who had rehearsed this call in her head 100 times before actually making it. "Yes," I said slowly. "Who is this?" "My name is Priya," she said. And in that instant, every casual mention of that name over the past year came rushing back to me like a wave crashing on rocks. I think we need to talk," she continued. "About Daniel, about us." I sat frozen in that hospital chair, surrounded by strangers, while my entire life quietly split into two timelines, the one I thought I was living and the one that was actually happening. Priya told me everything, not out of cruelty, but out of desperation. She had found something too, a text message from an unknown woman on Daniel's phone congratulating him on his upcoming wedding anniversary. Except Priya thought Daniel was engaged to marry her. She had been planning a future with him, a future that included children, a home together, and a wedding date they had already picked. Daniel had two entire lives running in parallel, mine, which had lasted 8 years, and hers, which had been building quietly for the last 11 months, layered so precisely underneath mine that neither of us had ever noticed the seams. I want you to sit with that thought for a moment, because betrayal like this isn't just about cheating in a moment of weakness. This was architecture, this was planning. This was a man who woke up every single day, looked both of us in the eyes, and chose to keep building two separate futures on top of one lie. I didn't cry on that phone call. I wish I could tell you I broke down immediately, but I didn't. I went numb instead. My aunt's surgery finished successfully that day, and everyone around me was relieved and happy, hugging each other, thanking the doctors. And I stood there smiling politely, nodding at the right moments, while inside something was quietly dying. Priya and I exchanged more information that evening. She sent me screenshots, hotel bookings, photos from a weekend trip Daniel had told me was a work conference, a voice note where he called her the only woman he'd ever truly loved, the exact same phrase he had used with me on our wedding day. That detail hurt more than anything else. Not the lying, not the cheating, but the recycling of words, as if love to him was just a script he performed for whoever was in front of him. That night I went home. Daniel was sitting on the couch, watching television, completely unaware that his entire world had just cracked open on the other side of the country. He looked up and smiled. "Hey, how was your aunt's surgery?" I looked at him, really looked at him, for what felt like the first time in months. And I said, "She's fine, everything went well." That was it. I didn't say another word about what I knew. Because in that exact moment, something inside me shifted from heartbreak into strategy. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry in front of him and give him the satisfaction of comforting me with more lies. I decided right there on that couch that if Daniel had spent 11 months building a secret life behind my back with careful precision and patience, then I would spend the next few weeks building something just as precise, something he would never see coming. I was done being the woman who found out last. It was time to become the woman who exposed everything first. The next morning, I did something I had never done in 8 years of marriage. I opened Daniel's laptop while he was in the shower. My hands were shaking, but not from guilt, from adrenaline, because I finally understood something important. For 8 years, I had given this man the benefit of every doubt. Now it was time to give myself the benefit of the truth. I found a folder labeled Client Reports 2024. Buried inside it were photos. Photos of Daniel and Priya at a lake house. Photos of them shopping for furniture together. A screenshot of a chat where he told her, "Once I finalize things with Alina, we can finally be together properly." Finalize things with Alina, that's how he referred to ending an 8-year marriage, like closing a business account. I didn't confront him that day. I didn't confront him the next day either. Instead, I did something far more powerful. I became patient. I began quietly collecting evidence, screenshot by screenshot, conversation by conversation, building a case not for a courtroom, but for the truth itself. I reached out to Priya again, and this time we made a decision together. If Daniel had lied to both of us separately, we were going to face him together. Not out of revenge for revenge's sake, but because we both deserved to hear the truth from his own mouth in real time, without any more room for excuses. But I wanted something more than a private confrontation behind closed doors, because private confrontations are easy for people like Daniel. He was smooth, he was persuasive. He would twist the story, make me feel guilty for invading his privacy, maybe even convince me it was some kind of misunderstanding. I needed something undeniable, something public, something that would strip away his ability to lie his way out of it in front of the people whose opinions mattered most to him, his family, his colleagues, his closest friends. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Daniel's company was hosting its annual awards dinner, a large, formal event where employees were recognized for their achievements. Daniel had been nominated for Regional Manager of the Year. His parents were flying in for the occasion. My in-laws, who had always treated me like their own daughter, were incredibly proud of him. Over 150 people were expected to attend, including his entire office, his extended family, and several of our closest mutual friends. It was, ironically, the perfect stage for the truth to finally step into the spotlight. I spent the next 3 weeks preparing quietly. I compiled every piece of evidence into a clean, organized timeline: dates, messages, photos, the voice note, hotel bookings, everything. I printed physical copies as backup, saved digital copies in multiple locations, and prepared a short, calm statement. Not an emotional outburst, not screaming, just the truth delivered clearly in front of witnesses who could no longer look away. Priya agreed to send me one final piece of proof just days before the event: a recent message from Daniel confirming he was still planning their future together, completely unaware that his future was about to collide head-on with his present. The night before the awards dinner, I sat alone in our bedroom, looking at the man sleeping peacefully beside me, calm, comfortable, secure in his double life. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel sadness looking at him. I felt something colder, something steadier. I felt ready. The morning of the awards dinner, Daniel was in an unusually good mood. He hummed while getting dressed. He joked about winning the award. He even said, "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Alina. You've been my rock for 8 years." I smiled and said, "I know exactly how much you owe me." He laughed, thinking it was affection. He had no idea it was foreshadowing. I wore a simple black dress that evening, nothing dramatic, nothing that would draw attention before it was time. I wanted people focused on what I would say, not on what I was wearing. In my small handbag, folded neatly, was a printed copy of the timeline. On my phone, saved securely, were the screenshots, the voice note, and the photos. Daniel's parents greeted me with warm hugs when we arrived. His mother whispered, "I'm so proud of both of you. You've built such a beautiful life together." I hugged her back tightly because despite everything, I truly loved her and I knew that what was about to happen would hurt her too. But I also knew that the truth, no matter how painful, was still better than living inside her son's lie. The hall was beautifully decorated: round tables, soft lighting, a small stage at the front for the award presentations. Around 150 guests filled the room: colleagues in sharp suits, spouses in evening wear, senior executives from partner companies. This was Daniel's professional world, the world he took immense pride in, the world where his reputation meant everything to him. Which is exactly why I chose it. Throughout dinner, Daniel mingled confidently, shaking hands, laughing at the right moments, playing the role of the dedicated husband and rising star employee flawlessly. I watched him from a distance, and for the first time I saw him clearly not as my husband, but as a performer reciting lines he had perfected over months of practice. Around 8:30 p.m., the awards ceremony began. Category after category was announced. Applause, photos, smiles, and then finally the moment arrived. And now for Regional Manager of the Year, the host announced, the award goes to Daniel. The room erupted in applause. Daniel stood up, straightened his jacket, and walked toward the stage with the confident stride of a man who believed his life was exactly as perfect as it appeared. He took the microphone, thanked his manager, thanked his team, thanked the company for the opportunity, and then he said the words that sealed his fate. And most importantly, I want to thank my incredible wife, Alina, who has supported me through every step of this journey. None of this would be possible without her. The room turned toward me, smiling, ready to applaud. I stood up slowly, smoothing my dress, and walked toward the stage. Daniel smiled at me, assuming I was simply coming up to share a proud, sentimental moment with him in front of everyone. He had no idea that in the next 90 seconds, his entire double life was about to collapse in front of 150 witnesses. I reached the stage, and Daniel, still smiling, offered me the microphone with genuine warmth, expecting a few sweet words about supporting each other through the years. I took the microphone. The room was quiet, expectant, warm with anticipation. Thank you, Daniel, I began, my voice calm and steady. You're right, I have supported you through so much these past 8 years, which is why I think everyone in this room deserves to know exactly what that support has looked like. I saw his smile falter slightly. A flicker of confusion crossed his face, but he still hadn't understood what was coming. 3 weeks ago, I continued, I received a phone call from a woman named Priya. Some of you may actually know her. She works with one of our partner companies in the Eastern region. The confusion on Daniel's face shifted instantly into panic. His eyes widened. He reached for the microphone, laughing nervously, trying to play it off. Alina, honey, maybe we should talk about this later. No, I said gently but firmly, stepping slightly back so he couldn't reach the microphone. I think now is exactly the right time. I pulled out my phone. On the large screen behind the stage, the same screen that had been displaying award category names all evening, I connected my phone through the presentation system the event coordinator had kindly set up earlier for a surprise tribute video, which I had arranged under a different pretense entirely. The screen lit up with a photo, Daniel and Priya together at a lake house, then another, a screenshot of a message where Daniel told Priya he loved her more than he had ever loved anyone. Then the final piece, an audio clip played through the hall's sound system where Daniel's voice, unmistakable, said clearly, "Once I finalize things with Alina, we can finally be together properly." The hall went completely silent, not a whisper, not a fork clinking against a plate, just silence. I looked out at the crowd. I saw his mother's hand rise slowly to her mouth. I saw his manager's jaw tighten. I saw colleagues exchanging shocked glances. And I saw Daniel standing frozen on stage beside me, his face drained of all color, his mouth opening and closing without a single word coming out. For 11 months, I continued calmly, my husband built a second life with another woman while accepting my support, my trust, and my love every single day. He planned to leave both of us in the dark until it suited him to choose. Tonight, I decided he doesn't get to make that choice quietly anymore. I turned to him directly, still holding the microphone steady despite the storm inside me. You thanked me for supporting your journey, Daniel, so here's my support. I'm setting you free. Completely, right now. In front of everyone who respects you so they can decide for themselves exactly who you really are. I placed the microphone gently back on its stand, picked up my small handbag from the table, and walked out of that hall with my head held high, leaving behind a silence so heavy it would be remembered by everyone in that room for years to come. Daniel didn't chase after me. He couldn't, because for the first time in 11 months, he had absolutely no script left to perform. Word spreads fast in small professional circles, and by the next morning, the story had traveled far beyond that hall. Colleagues who witnessed it couldn't stop talking about it. Some felt sorry for me, others felt disgusted by Daniel. His manager, I later learned, quietly pulled him aside the very next week, not because infidelity was a workplace matter, but because Daniel's public image, the very image the company had proudly celebrated just days earlier, had completely unraveled in front of major clients and senior leadership who were also in attendance. Daniel tried calling me over 40 times that first week, messages ranging from anger to desperation to pleading. You humiliated me in front of everyone. You didn't have to do it like that. We could have fixed this privately. But here's the thing about privacy: Daniel wanted privacy only when it protected him. He never offered me that same privacy when he was secretly building a life with someone else for nearly a year. Privacy, to men like Daniel, isn't about respect, it's about control, and I refuse to hand him that control one more time. His parents called me too that same week. His mother, through tears, said something I will never forget. I'm not calling to defend him, Alina. I'm calling because I'm ashamed and I needed you to know that. That meant more to me than any apology Daniel could have offered. Priya and I spoke a few more times after that night. Strangely, we didn't become enemies. If anything, we became each other's proof that we hadn't imagined our own worth. Two women lied to simultaneously by the same man, choosing truth over silence. She later told me that after everything became public, several of her own friends reached out, revealing that they had quietly suspected something wasn't right for months but were too afraid to say anything. Sound familiar? It always does in hindsight. Daniel eventually moved out of our house 3 weeks after that night. Quietly, without fanfare, without the dramatic pleading he'd shown in those first few days. I think somewhere inside him, he finally understood there was nothing left to plead for. Not because I was cruel, but because trust, once shattered that completely, in that public and undeniable a way, doesn't get quietly repaired over coffee and apologies. I filed for divorce 2 months later. Daniel didn't contest it. In fact, I heard through mutual friends that he left the company entirely within the year, transferring to a different city altogether, perhaps to start over somewhere his story hadn't already been told. But stories like this don't really end when the paperwork is signed. They end when the person who was betrayed finally, truly exhales. For me, that exhale didn't come immediately. It took months of quiet evenings alone, relearning who I was outside of being Daniel's wife. It took long walks, uncomfortable conversations with my own reflection, and slowly rebuilding a version of myself that didn't revolve around someone else's approval. But it did come, eventually it came. 6 months after that night, I moved into a small apartment on the other side of the city. Smaller than the house Daniel and I had shared, but entirely, completely mine. I painted the walls a soft sage green, a color Daniel never would have chosen, and that's exactly why I picked it. I reconnected with old friends I had drifted from during the marriage, without even realizing how much of myself I had quietly folded away to fit into that relationship. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. I even started a small evening class in pottery, of all things, something completely unrelated to my career, just for the joy of creating something with my own hands, something that couldn't lie to me, couldn't betray me, couldn't disappear one day into someone else's life. A year later, I ran into Daniel's former manager at an industry event. He told me something that stuck with me deeply. He said, "You know, Alina, in 20 years of working in this industry, I've seen a lot of scandals, but I've never seen someone handle betrayal with that much composure. You didn't scream, you didn't break down, you just showed the truth and let people draw their own conclusions." I thanked him, but inside, I knew the composure hadn't come easily. It came from 3 weeks of quiet planning, of turning heartbreak into clarity instead of chaos. It came from understanding that the most powerful response to a lie isn't rage, it's truth, delivered calmly, at exactly the right moment. People often ask me if I regret how I did it, if exposing him publicly was too much. And my answer is always the same. Daniel didn't lose his reputation because I exposed him. Daniel lost his reputation the day he decided to build a second life behind my back. I simply refuse to protect that lie any longer. Some betrayals deserve quiet, private closure. But some betrayals, the kind built on 11 months of calculated deception, spanning two women's entire futures, deserve to be seen clearly by everyone who once believed the lie. I don't hate Daniel anymore. Hate requires energy, and I've chosen to spend my energy on things that actually deserve it: my friendships, my creativity, my peace. What I feel now when I think about him is something closer to distance. The kind of distance you feel looking at an old photograph of a stranger who happens to share your history. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this: trust is not the same as blindness. I trusted Daniel for 8 years, and for most of those years, that trust was well placed. But somewhere along the way, trust without awareness became a hiding place for deception. I'm not telling you to suspect everyone around you. I'm telling you to stay awake in your own life. Notice the small shifts. Notice when someone stops mentioning a name they used to mention constantly. Notice when work trips quietly grow longer without explanation. Notice when the person beside you starts feeling a little more like a roommate and a little less like a partner. Trust your gut, even when your heart insists on believing otherwise. And if you ever find yourself in a position like mine, discovering a truth so large it threatens to swallow your entire identity, please remember this: you get to choose how that truth is revealed. You don't have to shout, you don't have to shrink, you don't have to protect someone else's comfort at the expense of your own dignity. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply refusing to let a lie live in silence any longer. Daniel spent 11 months carefully building a story where he controlled every version of the truth that reached each of us. I spent 3 weeks quietly gathering the pieces of that story until I could finally hand it back to the world exactly as it was: unfiltered, undeniable, and finally, completely out of his hands. That night in that hall, I didn't destroy Daniel's life. I simply stopped protecting it. And in doing that, I finally started protecting my own. If this story moved you, remember, it's not really about Daniel or Priya or even me. It's about every person quietly sensing something is wrong and wondering if they have the strength to face it. You do. It might take time, it might take patience, but the truth always finds its way to the surface eventually. The only real question is, when it does, will you have the courage to stand in it? Thank you for listening to this story. If it resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and stay with us for more true stories of betrayal, strength, and the quiet power of walking away with your dignity intact.